And on behalf of MCA Social Committee and Crescent Foundation, I would like to welcome you all for Jazakallah Khairan Dr. Tauqeer for coming here. He's a medical doctor. He's originally from India, Mumbai, and he did his schooling there, and then he continued the school here. And currently he lives in Atlanta, but he is working in South Carolina. He is not only a doctor, medical doctor, but he is an entrepreneur and social leader and good speaker. And we are truly honored to have you with us, Dr. Saab. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank brother Saidur Rahman, who is the founder of Crescent Foundation, who's been here when he moved from Atlanta, so they were buddies.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the introduction. I appreciate it. If you take a country like India, which has the second largest population, Muslim population in the world after Indonesia, if you go around in different countries, maybe the situation is the same, but education problem, economic problem goes pretty much hand in hand with all the countries throughout the world. Certain countries are worse, certain countries have less security, more in terms of collapse of their power, in terms of collapse of the political system, everything. And so looking at that, we go back to the economic status, how Indian Muslims, at least Muslims in India, in terms of economy has been doing. So this was a 2010-2011 survey which was done, and it can show pretty much 100% of Muslims, which probably boils down to around the census around 180 million Muslims. Unofficially, there are probably over 220 million Muslims. So officially, the government declares 180 million Muslims. If you look at that, only 6% of the Muslims are thriving. Rest of your 94% Muslims are either suffering or they're struggling. So if you look at 6% thriving, 62% are struggling. That means they make enough wages for that day and a little bit more to survive the next year or so. They don't have steady jobs. They're working in menial jobs, laborers, those kinds of things. And 32% suffering. They are actually going hungry every day. That's how we take these figures as. Next time. So, and if you look at most of the Muslims, 1 out of 3 Muslims, 1/3 of the population of Muslims are surviving in less than $6 per month. So that's their status going. So the 32% what you see, they are hungry every day. What we are actually, as when Saeed, we met in Atlanta, we became good friends. Saeed is a PhD in physics, and I'll talk to him a little bit more about it. I myself, I'm from India. I've done my medicine there. I came to the United States. I did my residency back in India, then I did my another residency out here. And then I started my practice. And the more we looked into it, we have a couple of friends. We used to sit every other weekend or so after Fajr, we used to sit down and go out for breakfast, 4 or 5 of us. And we used to talk about things. And then we came out with this idea, where the problem lies, how we should tackle the problem. And so this is what our mindset came about to be, is where do we start? There's so many things to start with. So we are looking at these 25% of Muslim children. That's where we started. Why? Because they don't have any access, or they don't have any way to go to school. And that's where the whole thing starts. If you don't have education, you get into that vicious cycle. You don't have a job, you can't earn money, you go hungry. And you're in that poverty cycle. Then your next generation is also in the same poverty cycle, going down. So if you look at it, because there is so much, 94% of the Muslims are struggling, they don't occupy jobs also. Even though they are 17% of the population, they only occupy less than 3% of armed forces, 7% administration, 5% railway, even higher jobs, maximum of 6%. So it does not represent the population of Muslims that are there. So when we go there, we see, again, same thing in the rural areas, don't have any land, 60% don't have any land, and just 2.1% of the farmers have even basic things like tractors and all to work. So, next slide. So, welfare, no, previous. Welfare also, they are not getting any welfare, maybe 6-7%, 2.5%. So really they're lagging behind everything. And the basic reason why they're lagging behind is education. Education, which is they're denied or they don't have it, they don't have access to education, whatever the reason is. So we came out with this. Our main belief is that charity should not create dependency. We don't want people to be dependent on charity. We give money, they get food to eat, we send them food back. There's a lot of charitable organizations which does. We want them to be initiated, we want them to take that to the next level where they want to get out of poverty and they work hard to get out of poverty. So this is what California is all about. It's the people come with their dreams, they make themselves, they do things, and that's where it is. We don't want to destroy that initiative. We actually want to grow this initiative as much as possible. And that will actually break the wall of poverty. Next one. So we go back, this was, again, 52% of Muslims are below the age of 19. This is the age group cohort right here. And this is all religions in India. And this is Muslim religion. So you have nearly 50% of the Muslims which are actually below the age of 19. So half of the Muslim population are very young population. This is our challenge right now. This is where, what are you going to do with this? If you miss them right here, they will be in poverty later down the line. They will occupy jobs which are, most of these children, they end up, because they don't have access to school, they end up into child labor market. Actually 2 years ago, one of the Indians, he won the Nobel Peace Prize because of the child labor he worked with. And I think 80 or 90,000 children, he got them out of child labor, and he got them into institutions, basically getting them out and getting them placed or getting them some form of education. By the way, most of those people, most of the children were Muslims. They didn't write about that, but when you break down the whole thing, you see that. So these end up in child labor. So what are we looking at? A total population of 180 million. This is the government data. There are 90 million school-going children, less than 18, 19 years of age. Out of that 90 million, 50% have no access to school. That is 45 million children have no access to school. Why no access means a student has to walk at least 5 to 6 kilometers to get to a school. So there's no local school there. How many students walk there? Most of them don't. They'll go for a grade or two and they'll drop out. They'll start working in child labor market. So now this is a major crisis. We hear these crises, and which is very sad to see. Sad pictures, sad stories, sad everything about Syria, about Palestine, about Burma, which is ongoing right now. How these people are suffering. But imagine this 45 million people slowly, quietly suffering, and nobody talks about them. Nobody knows about them, and they end up in child labor. They end up in sexual industries, all kinds of things, wrong things you can think about. So this is a major, major crisis which is going on, very silent, and now with the right-wing government, it's worse, which we also face in this country. Go ahead, next one. So pillars of human development, we've talked about access to food. These are the 3 pillars of, if you want any development of a population or human development to take place, you have to have these 3 things. That means you have to have access to food, there should be food on the table, enough nutrition, enough calories for children to grow, family to have food, healthcare should be there so nobody falls sick, or if they fall sick, they have access to it so that they can get better, they don't get into debts with that and go back into poverty. And education is the key right there. Education so you can get a job and you can put the table, food to the table. So whenever we do things, in anything in life, as an entrepreneur, when I look at it, somebody comes to me, I look, okay, what's the return of investment? If I have to buy something, what's my return on investment? If I do something, we always look at return. If you get education, what's the return? If I want to give my child an education, what is the return of the investment? If he's going to do a graduation in music, is it really going to make him, make money for him? Can he lead his life with that or something? So we'll always look at that. Does it achieve what we want? That's number 1 question. Is it achieving what we want? Is quality education being dispensed? So whenever we give education, there's a lot of organizations which does work with children and education, but are they giving quality of education? Or are they giving what we call it as, what I say is certified but not qualified? So yes, they're going through, pushing them through their colleges or school, and they're giving them certificate, but really, in a sense, they're not qualified for what they've done. So that's poor education which is being dispensed. How do you know that? Would you hire these graduates? If they come out If it was your company, would you hire them to work at that? That's how you do it. So where do you say, should we do school education versus university education? Which is the best return of investment? So you're putting in your money, where do you want to put it? Do you want to put it at school level, primary school, elementary school, high school, or should you put them through engineering colleges, medical colleges, or basic sciences college? Where should you do that? Are the students competing in the real world? So you need to make sure with all this education that they are prepared to compete in the real world. Like how we have done. We have studied from back home, whichever country we come from. But we've competed in that environment against the general population. We've come here and we are competing with the general population and we're working with these people. So are these students who come out from there, are they competing? And disaster giving versus legacy giving. What is your idea of giving things? Is it that you just want to do crisis-based management, or you want to do something which is going to be long-term management, which will help you? So if it's crisis-based management, yes, those things are there. You can keep throwing in your money and burning in the money. They do need to have those things. But also you have to have certain amount of legacy. That you're creating a legacy, you're creating something which is down the line is going to be self-sustaining and other people are going to be taken out of poverty. So going to that, we looked at different models. One of the models we looked at was Al Amin mission. Why did we look at this? Because they only do primary education. They don't do anything. It was started back in 1988. It is probably a 25, 30, 28 years old organization. They started with just 12 students. And why do I say with 12 students? Because that's how it starts, these kinds of things. Google started very slow, very small. Nobody knew about the company. Same thing with Apple, same thing with all these companies. But they grew big. There were several other companies that started. We don't hear the name, but these started. Why do I want to take the example is for several reasons. Number one, they've done very well. This was started by an IAS officer who did very well. He succeeded in Indian administrative exam. It's one of the toughest exams in India, like IIT or those things. And it was started, and now you see the domino effect of that. What is going is they have around 50 schools under them, all primary schools, primary, elementary, and secondary schools they have. Out of the 50 schools, they graduate, they have probably 17,000 students under them in those schools. Out of 16,000, each class is around 1,400, 1,500 each class. So every year you are getting graduates, anywhere from 1,200 to 1,400 graduates every year from that school. So that's where it is. Why do I say that? Another thing is now you see the benefit. These are 2012 onwards. I'm going to show you the articles. You see 4 students in measure have in the top 20 merit list. Top 20, they are coming, 4 students are from there. Majority of these boys are from economically challenged backgrounds and fought against all odds to get education. So this is 2000. Again, so you see these are from poor families, especially in science stream. This is the person I'm talking about, the founder, Nurul Islam. Okay? I'll come back to that name again. That year, there were 849 students of mission which graduated. Out of that, a third were girls. They took the high school examination. 6 of them scored above 90, 72 above 85, 286 above 80, and most of the students scored a first class above 60%, which is pretty good in India. So you've got very good students coming out, excellent students going into science streams, everything. Then you got students coming out who actually do very well in other technical jobs and other things, which makes your society, the background of your society. So again, another article is they students beat poverty to get high ranks, okay, in joint entrance exams. So again, this is a 2012 article, 165 went into medical schools and 241 went into engineering. Out of that, 800 students, 800 and some students. And their ranking also was within that 1800 for the 1800 for the medical school, and engineering joint entrance exam is a all over India exam. And 15,000 engineering category they got within the 15,000. That means they'll be able to get estimations in reputed institutions in government and private for undergraduate course. Why do I say that? Because here's now your dilemma where I asked you a question. Do you want to invest in primary care return on investment, or you want to go for higher education investment? This is your best return on investments. You don't have to build colleges in science streams, math streams. You don't have to build higher learning colleges because the infrastructure is already there. There are government colleges there which give very subsidized education, and they're very good education. There are private colleges who also give subsidized education for poor people. They have fundings, and there are trusts and other charitable organizations which will pick up your fees if you get into this with this kind of ranking. So even in this country, if you top, you rank, you can go to Harvard, you can go and you get full scholarships. So they have those things. You really literally don't have to build a re-engineer yourself and build these kinds of institutions when you already have that, when you can get these students out. And these students are prepared to get into the real world and compete against real people, real students in this, and not just Muslim students, Muslim medical schools, Muslim engineering colleges and those kinds. So really you don't have to, what is your return on investment? I will tell you what is your return. Why did I pick Al Amin Mission? Because we actually have a student from Al Amin Mission. When it was started back in 1988-89, it was started with 12 students. And guess who was one of the students? He's right in front of you. Saeed was one of the students. So you have a student coming from there, and you see what? His father has a very meager income. I think it was around less than $10 a month he was making, with all the children, taking care of it, and that's what it is. That's what brought him. And why do I say Nurul Islam? Because he started with 12 students. So Saeed was one of his students he started with. And that's what he's invested his time and money in, on 12 students, which is now grown to 17,000 students. And this is the results of graduation that you're getting. This is the news from 2016. 85 girls, if you look at 14, 15, 16, 27, 20, 31, 85 girls actually went into good, reputable medical colleges in 2016. Next. So, besides the 85 girls, this was 358. So you nearly have 440 students cracked the exam of them, ranking 48th, 150th, coming from remote villages. Al Amin Mission has been working towards changing, especially in Bengal, and classes for joint. And there were 1,100 graduates in 2015. Next. You see, out of that, from 2005 to 2014, this is in medical student school only. These are every year they produce graduates from high school who join medical schools. This is what it is. This is your return on investment. If you had to build medical college for 100 students, graduating 100 students, breaking Muslim, imagine what immense cost would have cost for the infrastructure. You don't, because it's already there. And these are the students who are coming out with high academic, they can compete around in the world. They can do better than me, I promise you. Next. So even the Telegraph has picked it up, and they have said, minority medicines, if you see that, it says, Muslim Bengal embracing education to break free from certain way of life in an age-old stereotype. How about good? So that's another. Go ahead. This was a recent article to the September. So Al Amin Mission, reforming society silently. It's a very silent process. You don't hear from it. It's a very silent process for these 45 million students who have no access to education. So it's a very silent. In a single man, always radiant smile on his face. He founded only 3 decades ago in West Bengal to serve. So why do I say that investing in these students makes a huge difference? If you look at what Saeed is, I don't know whether, I'm sure you know him very well, but you don't know his history about his education. Well, he finished his high school. He went into a reputable college there. He finished there. He went to Germany to do his PhD. Germany PhD is much more tougher than US PhD. He finished his PhD from there in physics. Then he was taken up by CERN, which is the nuclear collider project, which is in the 3 countries, Switzerland, Germany, and I think France. It's a 27-mile, crosses all 3 borders. It's half-mile under because of different reasons, magnetic fields and all those things. So what they do out there, they take this, they collide these small particles and they create these Higgs boson particle. They don't know what this particle is because it's a very small, they call it God's particle. And why do they? Because they have no clue about this particle. They can't study it because it's so small, the speeds are so high. So Saeed actually is in laser, and he has devised instrumentation which measures speeds in very, very small units of time. Usually speeds we can measure up to nanoseconds, which is a millionth of a second. He's devised where he can measure it in femtoseconds, which is a millionth of a nanosecond. So that amount of speed. And I joke with him because I call it a frog. So it's basically, it's not a joke, but it is frequency resolved optic gating. So he's taken those lasers and he's resolved those frequency in terms of optic gating, where it measures time when the particle leaves and goes in femtosecond. So he worked in that CERN project. Out of that CERN project, he was actually identified by the US government, and he was brought to Los Alamos Labs, which is a national lab. And then he worked there on some projects we don't know about. So he finished that, he actually didn't, he was picked up by Georgia Tech. And that's how I met him, because he came to Georgia Tech to work. Georgia Tech does a lot of DoD, Department of Defense work. So he worked in Georgia Tech for some time. And that's how I worked. I got very interested because I think he's one of those very few people in this country who works in this area. I probably, if I don't go wrong, if he's within that 10 to 15 people who has that kind of level of expertise. As usual, California comes out first. Somebody in Abbott identified him and actually wanted to get him to California. So they wrote him and they contacted him and they made an offer which he could not refuse. So of course he took it. He came and talked to me. We had a nice talk about it. I felt very sad that he was going, but I looked at the offer and I said, my God, I couldn't refuse it too. Well, I said, as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking, he's one of those 15, 20 guys in the whole nation. He can bargain. I said, go back and tell them you don't want this, you want more, or you want all this. So of course, they gave another 25% raise. So you can see the level of his expertise, what they want, that they were ready to pay any price. So that's a student from Alam Mission, one of those 12 students who were in the class. Okay? The whole school that started. So now he comes here. He's working with Abbott for a couple of years. So he heads the unit, he does things, and guess what? Abbott makes these programs look so good because of underhead that J&J comes and buys his unit out for $4.5 billion a year or so ago. So Saeed has still not disclosed me what he's getting after. So anyway, so you see that level of expertise, what thing has done. There was a student, that family, which was a struggling family, was making less than $10 a month, who's come out because of that return on investment. So in that way we thought about it. This is the best return of, we're not, we don't have, huge amounts of income where we can keep on putting in hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars and not worry about it. Create foundation which has, we have limited resources. Where can we put our resources into and create that? So this Crescent Foundation was created at that time. Very small, just came out of ideas, nothing. No money in the bank, nothing. What Saeed does, that land belongs to him. He donates his own land. He starts this school. And then he had no money, not much money, to build the whole school. He had just enough money to maybe make a few classes. We put in some money and make that first floor right down there. Next slide. So we start this in 2014. 2012, 2013, we got the idea. By the time we started 2014, this was the building. We started with 37 students only. In 2015, we have 98 students. Out of that, 78 are needy, 9 are orphans. Second floor come. 2016, you can see the third floor come. And this is all just our personal funding. There's nothing more than that. And now we have 165 students, 83 are needy, destitutes, and 15 are orphans. So you see out of that, nearly half of the students. Now I show this slide for several reasons. Well, when you come to California, people ask, first thing is, what's your return on investment? I said, okay, this is what it is. How is it a scalable model? How is this going to work out in the future? Okay, this is one project. What have you done is? And the answer is right. This is what we think is the model going to work for the future. This is how Al Amin mission has also worked. And we see that based, we'll go to the next, actually stay on this slide. We'll see that because we have a model, if one-third of your, if one-third of your students are full paying students, okay, nearly 35–40%, another 30–35% are partial paying students, you can actually take a fourth of the students which are non-paying, which are totally orphans, destitutes, the needy will come into the other group and full paying. Now, what does that do? That's a model that will be self-sustaining down the line. And then the magic number is 300 students when it's self-sustaining. So you have nearly 80–85 students which are totally free, orphans and destitutes. Then you have another 100 students which are non-paying, and the rest of them are, non-paying means partial paying, sorry, and the rest of them are full paying. What does that do? Number one, you have to set up an institute which actually provides an education which a person who can afford that education is ready to send his children there into that school. So you are assuring quality, number one. Nobody would pay a full price private school to send their children with poor education. So you want to ensure first quality that you're giving. Because why? It's a responsibility that you have taken to give them quality education. Saeed got that quality of education. That's how easy. Okay? So you want to make sure that they come out, they get real jobs, that you are going to hire them, that you'll be confident that you'll leave everybody else and pick them out. That's how it should be. So that quality of education will be ensured by people who are paying. And that puts pressure on the people who are working there, because if you pay, you're going to ask for it. Also, when you have paying students, you're subsidizing other things. It's by mass. The more you have mass, the easier it is to subsidize these students. Third thing is, once you get to that 300, you're at that break-even point. So you don't need to put more money into your investments. Now you've put in this for 3, 4, 5 years. Now you're getting to that number. If you get to 400 to 500 students, you actually start making a little bit money. What does that do? That can actually help to set up other schools. So that means if you have a critical mass of 10 to 12 schools, then with that money coming in, you can actually build a school at every year and go at that. So that model, go ahead, next, works very well. Why did we choose Murshidabad? Because it's the most underdeveloped district. There are 63%, over half are Muslims, and it's very underdeveloped. It's very rural. It's nothing, no access to education. You can go 20 or 40 kilometers here and there, you'll not find things. So this is the project that we did, There's another project we are looking at close to Delhi to do it. There's one which is close to Hyderabad that we are in the process of talking to them, getting them. We've said this. I think this is nearly finished now, so this is done. So there are 3 projects, and a fourth we are talking to acquire some land in Bihar to do another project. So we are looking at things. We are slowly going and starting things next. So charities, I feel, is an investment in our community. That's how I look at it. So hitting the intended target is very important. If you're giving it for some reason, if you're giving it for refugees, it hits the refugees. If you're giving it for the people in ravaged-torn countries, it should hit the intended target. Let's not go in here misappropriated or done things. You have to have a return on investment. Some things just don't, because you know you're giving it to a war-torn country, it's not going to be there. But most of the things, especially in education, you have to give it this. Because it is your responsibility, if you are giving education to a child, that it is quality education. Okay? You have to look at overhead and administrative costs with any charity, and conflict of interest. I'll come back to it. Again, charity should not create dependency. This should be in our mind. It should not create dependency, or take away the individual's initiative to break the walls of poverty. Next one. So we talked about this. If nearly 40% paid in full, partially full, another 35. So you have 3/4 of the paying, some paying. Then you can have 25% full needy children, which are either orphan, single mother, or destitute families. They can, and that's the fee schedule that has been set, where they pay either nothing or very minimal. And these are per month in terms of Indian rupees. People who are not from that subcontinent, I will tell you, this is probably around $5. $5 a month. That includes your books, your all education, your meals, and living in there. From 0 to 5 to a maximum of $8. That's what you'd be paying if you were here. Anyway, and most of them are 0. The people who are talented students from needy families, they pay this much amount, which is less than $50 anything per month. That includes your hostel fees, your food expense, and everything. And that also ensures that they get a balanced diet, they get good food to eat, they have places to play. And that's a full paying student, which is not that much. I mean, it's still around $60, $70, $80, $90.